Today, I'm talking about all the moving pieces that go into buying real estate in the beach cities of Los Angeles and understanding each part well enough to understand where you can maximize to get your best price and the terms you want when you end up in escrow. Sounds easy, right? Every piece of the equation is a sliding scale that represents opportunities to maximize the benefit to you as the buyer. Hello, my name is Tracy Conyers, and I'm team lead for Silicon Beach Properties and Team 𝙥𝙬𝙘𝙀. As we get started, let me say up front that I have lots of knowledge and truth bombs that I'm going to drop today, and this webinar is going to last about an hour. I know an hour sounds like a lot of time, but there's a lot to know when it comes to buying real estate in the beach cities. So make yourself comfortable and get ready to take lots of notes. I'm not holding anything back today. If you're not into taking notes, don't worry about it. I will be sending a follow-up email to let you know how to get the slide deck and the multitude of resources that I'm going to mention today. So let's get started. Lots of real estate agents assume that you know how the process of buying real estate works because, hey, that's their everyday language. So the minute you land on their radar, they start pressuring you to take action immediately. Super aggressive agents lead to consumers being wary of all agents, and that makes me very sad because there are a lot of us who really want to help and have a lot of information to share. How do I know they're going to pressure you? I study my competitors very closely and purposely put myself in a lot of their marketing systems to study their tactics. That should be your first clue that I'm not like a lot of other agents. This and a healthy dose of common sense says to me that most consumers are going to have a lot of questions because they don't buy and sell real estate every day. And I also know that a lot of buyers start the investigation process very early because they know there's a lot to learn. I'm going to start with the assumption that you do want to buy a property now or at some point, or you wouldn't be watching this, but that you're probably not quite ready yet. That's not to say that I'm not ready to fly into action if you are ready right this minute and you just came to get to know me a little better. That's just to say that I'm okay with people who are early in the process and just kicking the tires and getting the lay of the land. I very much understand and welcome that. So you don't have to worry about dodging me. I'm not here to pressure you in the least. My mission and the mission of anybody on my team is to make sure our buyer clients have the information they need to make smart choices on their terms and timeline, not ours. This is one reason I run a small team. We have fewer mouths to feed, and that removes a lot of the built-in incentives to pressure clients that you might see with bigger teams. So what does the buying process look like in the beach cities of LA? The process of buying property might seem a little bit overwhelming, or maybe it seems super easy to you because you don't know what goes into it yet. But I can tell you that the process comes down to 9 easy steps. If you follow these steps in the order that I present them, you have the best possible chance of buying real estate in the beach cities on the terms and the timeline that suits you. So let's dive in and take a peek at each step. Step number 1 when buying a home in the beach cities is to build your supporting team, starting with your real estate agent. Picking the right agent at the outset will keep you on track and moving forward towards your ultimate goal. There are a lot of different personality types out there in the agent world. The truth of the matter is that it doesn't take much to become an agent these days. Sure, it's gotten a little harder in recent years with a few extra classes that have to be taken, but it's just not that hard to become an agent, and sadly, not everybody who does get a license is going to be your best choice to represent you. Take my 2 friends in the slides here, Jimmy and Debbie. Jimmy will tell you anything to get you to sign on the dotted line. And Debbie, she's so timid, she just waits for things to happen and doesn't have the first clue about how to make things happen for her clients. And then there's Team 𝙥𝙬𝙘𝙀. We are the complete package. We're highly educated in all things real estate and constantly learning new and innovative ways to help our clients. We're detail-oriented, systems and analytics driven, and we get things done, all while listening carefully to our clients and their needs. It's important that you like and trust your agent, but there is so much more you need in a good agent. We've prepared a checklist to help you interview potential agents. You can find a link in the follow-up email that I promised earlier. Let me talk to you for a quick minute about dual agency. This is when you let the listing agent act as your buyer agent. There are so many points in the process where your interests conflict with the seller. Do you really think you're going to get the best deal for yourself by working with the agent who already has an existing relationship and allegiance to the seller? If you do, I have a special bridge for you. But seriously, if you really think the listing agent is going to be motivated to maximize every opportunity for you over his or her existing listing client, then I'm really not the agent for you anyway. You want the lowest price for the property, and the seller wants the highest price. You want the longest inspection period, and the seller wants the shortest inspection period. There are so many points in the process where your interests are going to diverge from the interests of the seller. And don't fall into the trap of believing that you can work with a junior member of the listing agent's team and still get maximum protection. That agent is usually going to want to curry favor with the boss, as in the listing agent. Step number 2, figuring out the money. There are so many ways the money part of the equation can be massaged to your benefit, but it starts with understanding your money picture yourself and sharing it with your agent so that we can collaboratively strategize together. Are you buying your property with a mortgage or all cash? Are mom and dad helping? How much do you need for closing costs? How will you pay for your agent representation? These are all the money questions that need to be answered before you even start looking at houses. Why? Because houses move fast in the beach cities, no matter what you might be reading about home sales in the national news. The national news and its headlines are all about getting you to click on the article or stay tuned through a commercial break to hear the story. Homes on the market for 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks in the national news becomes a major slowdown. You get what I'm saying, right? My point is that I want you to understand that you have to have most, if not all, of your I's dotted and your T's crossed before you find that one house that you want to make your offer on. The odds are high that your one is going to be highly appealing to other buyers and will move even faster than the ugly Mediterranean down the street that you want nothing to do with. Also, not all lenders are created equal either. Some shopping around might be part of getting ready. Some lenders are good with short escrows, and that allows you to compete with cash buyers. Some lenders can make good loans on smaller down payments. My team works with you to define your goals and pick a lender who can support your goals. We have a number of lenders for you to pick from. Talking to a lender will also help you crystallize your target price. You might think you know what you can afford, but a lender will be able to tell you for sure. Let me give you a quick piece of advice about using online lenders like Quicken or Discover to finance your home purchase. Those lenders are great for getting really good refi rates if you're not in a hurry. But in the heat of a negotiation, you really need a very nimble lending partner. I have a Discover loan on my own home. The experience was awesome, and the rate was really good. But the process took forever. Took at least 2 months longer than I expected, and way more time than I see what my lender partners do with my clients. If a seller has 2 or more offers come in, and one of the offers comes with a mortgage letter from an online bank, most listing agents will advise their client to go with the non-online bank offer. Why? Because sellers have their own timelines and they want to make sure that deals that go into escrow stay in escrow and close so that they don't have to go back to the market because your online lender failed to fund in time. Main Street commercial banks like Wells Fargo are almost as bad. This is why I favor mortgage brokers. They generally have access to lots of different programs and are more nimble and responsive than online banks or conventional Main Street banks. If you're using a mortgage to finance your purchase, my article titled 4 Hacks for High Rates is a must-read. For sure, don't miss my other article called Do's and Don'ts After Applying for a Mortgage. Links for these articles can be found on thetracytalks.com. Are you buying with cash? Are your assets liquid? What will it take to get them liquid? If you're going to make a cash offer on a property contingent on 21 days to get the funds together, you may as well write off any advantage you have as a cash buyer. You won't be any more attractive to a seller with your cash offer if you require a lot of time to get your cash together than another buyer who's coming in with a loan but has a nimble lender who can close fast. Start thinking about the steps that you need to take to get your funds available and ready to move quickly. You'll need 3% of your offer price right away when escrow opens, and you'll need the balance and closing costs 2 days before the close of escrow. These timing issues need to be thought through at the time you put your offer together. By now, I'm sure you've heard that the real estate rules have changed and sellers are no longer allowed to offer compensation to buyer agents in the MLS. Historically, a seller would have signed a listing agreement with their agent specifying a 5 or 6% commission to sell their property, and the listing agent would then have offered part of that commission in the MLS to the buying broker representing the successful buyer. With that mechanism no longer available, the new practice is for buyers to sign an agreement with their brokers, assuming responsibility to pay for the services, and then to ask for a concession in their offer to the seller for the funds to cover that representation fee. Although I hope that smart sellers will continue to offer concessions like this, there is no guarantee of payment, and at the end of the day, it will come down to who you're competing with to buy the property. One thing that is critical to keep in mind in this new normal is that once you sign that representation agreement with your buyer agent, you are agreeing to pay the professional fees. So if you're counting on the seller to offer a concession to cover those fees, you're going to have to be emotionally ready to give up on a property where the concession request is denied, or figure out another way to pay your agent yourself. You will not want to find yourself in escrow without a good agent, and once you are in escrow, you are likely on the hook for payment of that agent's professional services, even if you do fire your agent. Even a simple representation agreement with an easy out clause generally does not allow an out once you're in escrow. That agent worked very hard to get you into escrow and deserves to be paid. And as you're going to find out a little further in this webinar, escrow is that place where you need your agent more than ever. So you've picked your agent and put your money strategies in play. Now it's time to start thinking about looking at properties. But first you need to dial in on your search criteria, as in the features, the price, the location. You think you know what you're looking for in your next property, right? But have you really thought it through and made a list of what you think you want versus what the deal breakers are in your next home? For instance, what do you love about your current home and want to replicate in your next home? An easy commute, a favorite restaurant nearby, mom close by. The things we take for granted in our current life are easy to forget in the heat of a bidding war. Conversely, what do you want to do better in your next home? I've created a series of surveys specifically to walk you through the different aspects of buying a property on the topics of your life, the property, the neighborhood, and how you want to work with an agent. Links to these surveys will be in the follow-up email. You might also find my article helpful titled 8 Tips for Loving Your Next Neighborhood. I'll drop a link to that article in the follow-up email as well. Before you start looking at homes, you will definitely thank yourself, and probably me, if you go look at homes armed with that wants versus needs list. For instance, you might find a house that isn't perfect, but it's ideally situated, as in the location. If you can evaluate that property against a list of objective priorities, you might discover that you can make the house perfect next year with the addition of an ADU while simultaneously snagging a property in the right location right now at a price you can live with. Ask me sometime about the story of my own home, where I had 15 minutes to tour the house before we had to decide whether we were going to make an offer. There was no small amount of stress in our lives at that point. I had just raced across town and had 15 minutes to walk through the house. My husband had already had a few more minutes in the house, but I had to walk through, and fortunately, we had a very specific list that we were able to compare the house against. We made an offer that night. We were successful, and that 5-year house is now our 20-plus year home. It was a blindingly fast 15 minutes, but we knew what we had to have because we had that list. 20 years later, we're still happy with our choice. And by the way, it's okay if your wants and needs shift as you see more houses and neighborhoods. But the point is that you really want to have that list, and you want to make notes on that list as you go. Step number 4 when buying a beach city's home is to start touring homes and hopefully find one to make an offer on. Touring homes is arguably the fun part. It can be a lot of work, but you spend your time imagining your future life, and that can be cool. We can set up private tours for you, or we can take you on a FaceTime tour from the comfort of your current home. Under the new rules that started in August of 2024, you will need a buyer representation agreement to tour homes with us, both in person and virtually. So please know that we will be asking you to sign an agreement prior to touring, but don't worry about us asking you to marry us when you don't even know us yet. Our agreement has an easy out for both of us in case we don't click. In fact, if we're not your cup of tea, we're happy to refer you to another agent. We highly recommend that you don't go to open houses without us unless you want to experience feeling like raw meat at a shark fest. Seriously. Agents aren't usually hosting open houses to sell a home. They are trolling for buyer clients and will put the full court press on you the minute you walk through the door. I've had agents pressure me to sign their sign-in form even after I've identified myself as an agent. The pressure is pretty crazy. I don't understand the point, but this is the culture that you're walking into. We're happy to accompany you on any open house tour and point out the pros and cons of the properties. But we also understand if you want to attend open houses without us. We are available after you've seen the house to answer questions about the property and to set up a second showing. Definitely tell the agent hosting the open house that you are working with another agent. And don't let them tell you that you have to sign their buyer representation form to walk through an open house. The only agents who need a signed agreement with you are agents who expect to be paid when you go into and close escrow. If the hosting agent hassles you, get me on the phone and I'll set them straight for you. Step number 5 in buying a beach city's home is the step where you have found the one. Yay! Now we have to successfully acquire it for you, and this is where a good agent will really shine. The first step is that your agent, hopefully that's us, is talking to the listing agent about what's important to the seller. The article I wrote, titled "The Highest Offer Doesn't Always Win," explains that sometimes the seller might want something more than the most money, and maybe will want that something enough to take a lower offer. Do you want to overpay if you don't have to? I didn't think so. So it's critical for your agent to be talking to the listing agent with questions, looking for any negotiation advantage that will work for you, or at least a hook that will get the seller to pay attention to your offer and give you a place at the table. Almost as important as the price you offer are the contingencies that you put in your offer. Contingencies are reasons that a deal might fall apart. So sellers and their agents will look very hard at the contingencies that you're reserving when you make your offer. And they'll often go with the offer that has the least amount of contingencies. Typical contingencies relate to property condition, appraisal, and loans. Cash offers over a loan are one less contingency that escrow won't close at all or won't close on time. Each contingency in your contract is your out if something with the property isn't as expected, which is exactly why sellers try to avoid them. If you're buying with a mortgage, appraisal and loan contingencies aren't generally optional, unless you have a pot of cash somewhere that would allow you to make up the appraisal shortfall or drop the lender from the picture. You're going to need these contingencies. Property inspections tend to be a little fuzzier in terms of what is required and how long you'll take to complete your inspections. First, understand that all inspections are paid for by you out of pocket during escrow. For this reason, I always advise my clients to start with a good general inspection and skip other inspections unless the general inspection turns up red flags. This is a helpful strategy because these inspections can cost you several thousands of dollars, and if you walk away from the deal, that is money you'll never get back. You also need to fully understand the trend line in the neighborhood where you're making your offer. Are sellers calling the shots, or do buyers have more negotiating power? This is very much a neighborhood by neighborhood evaluation in the beach city. In sellers' markets, when inventory is tight and sellers are calling the shots, buyers are often skipping inspections altogether or taking only 10 days to complete them. Let me tell you that you can barely get a good general inspector in 10 days, let alone the follow-on inspections if some big flags are turned up. If there are red flags in that report, you can ask for more time from the seller, but if the seller is unwilling to cooperate, you have to be prepared to walk away from the property. If there are lots of sellers and not so many buyers, then those buyers in the market will have the upper hand, and they can make a few more demands in their offers that don't generally happen in seller markets. Learn more by reading my article titled "Buyers Markets versus Sellers Markets." If the market is favoring buyers, you might be able to go in with a lower price or more contingencies, but don't plan on insulting the seller with a lowball offer right out of the gate. You may not get a second chance to get a seat at the table for that property if there are other buyers in the picture. And regarding the price you might offer for that property, read my article titled "The Value of Sold Listings Data" to learn about using recently sold properties data to inform the price that you choose. Another important part of a successful offer is a clean offer. A clean offer demonstrates that you and your agent know your stuff, will be easy to work with, and will get the deal done. What do I mean by a clean offer? I mean, on its face, it's easy to understand and all of the supporting documentation is in order. I can't overemphasize enough the importance of a clean offer. If there are other buyers and they present as being easier to work with, you may be out no matter how much you offer. Part of a clean offer is a fair offer price in light of the trend line in the neighborhood and knowing from questions to the listing agent whether you're competing against other offers. Fun fact about me, I was an attorney in my first career. You can bet that I know how to dot I's and cross T's to put your best foot forward with your offer. And I do my homework and I talk to the listing agent and ask a lot of probing questions. Are you pre-underwritten with a solid lender? A good lender will be calling the listing agent as soon as the offer is submitted to answer questions about your ability to complete loan underwriting and fund your loan in a timely manner. Your offer will also define which party is paying certain costs. Right now, in the current market where we're at, the parties tend to split escrow fees 50-50. Other fees include transfer fees and city fees. All are negotiable. The offer is also where you ask the seller to pay for your buyer agent. If you're my client, we will write this in as a concession request. The bottom line when submitting your offer is that the offer must show that you understand the process, you're reasonable, you have a good agent, and you show every indication that escrow will close under the terms outlined in the offer. If your offer shows any risk that you won't be able to close under the terms offer, and the seller has other buyers who look more credible, they will typically go with that other buyer, or at least they should if they have a smart listing agent. This is why it's my personal practice to demonstrate with the offer and the cover email that you, as my buying client, know what you're doing, you have your loan or cash ready to go, you are committed to closing on time, you have a good agent, and you are ready to close on the terms outlined in your offer. No listing agent or seller wants to get 21 days into escrow only to find out you can't close and they have to go back to the market as a stale listing. And one last piece of advice when it comes to submitting your offer. Know before submitting your offer whether you are willing to or have the ability to raise your price in a counter offer scenario. Don't wait until you're in a race to get your offer accepted to make this decision. You might regret your decision later or find yourself unable to perform and lose your deposit, which is $30,000 per $1 million of purchase price. Losing your deposit can be very ugly. It's never happened to one of my clients. You don't want it happening to you. For more on making offers on residential real estate in California, read my 3-part article called Writing a Real Estate Offer in California. The offer-making process has so many moving parts. I hope I've convinced you just with this brief outline that I provided. This is why it matters who your agent is. Not just anybody can handle the complexities of escrow. You certainly don't want the Jimmy or the Debbie I described earlier to be the agent representing you in a complex escrow. Now we're ready to jump into the exciting world of escrow. Yeah, it's not exciting. It's going to be a little bit stressful, but exciting, no. So you thought a lot of work went into the offer process. Getting into escrow is just the beginning of the real work. I laughed when I found the picture of the girl with a stack of paper for this slide, but honestly, that depiction is not so far from the truth. This is California, the land of litigation. The amount of disclosures and other paperwork required is truly mind-boggling. You'll also need to think about how you're going to take title. That can have tax and succession consequences. You'll be reviewing a title report, which is the title history of the property you're buying, and it's critical to manage the time and priorities in escrow. First off, you'll need to wire your 3% deposit into escrow within 3 days of opening. You will get this money back if you walk away from the deal for any reason allowed under the contract. You may have to fight a little. The seller's not going to be happy, but legally you are fully entitled to the entire amount if you walk pursuant to a reserved contingency. There is no other way that you walk away from a deal and take your deposit with you. That's why contingencies are so important. For example, if you have an appraisal contingency and the property doesn't appraise at the amount needed for the loan, or if you have a loan contingency and the lender can't get final approval on the terms you can afford, both of these give you an out from the deal. If you leave the transaction for any other reason, you'll be leaving without your deposit. And as I mentioned, this is not an insignificant amount of money. If you're coming from an East Coast state to buy property, please understand that we do not use attorneys to close transactions in California. We use escrow companies with non-lawyers, and this is possible because we use highly vetted forms that shouldn't require any legal analysis. But having said this, it sure doesn't hurt you to have me as your buyer's agent with my legal background. I won't give legal advice, but I have a keen nose for smelling contractual opportunities and pitfalls, and I will point those out as we encounter them. As I mentioned earlier, there will be a lot of paperwork to sign. You're going to be asked to review title reports and fill out documentation about how to take title. All the paperwork can be overwhelming, but I and my team are with you every step of the way, explaining things and answering questions. This is the kind of thing you need to look for in the agent that represents you. And I want to insert a side note here about electronic signatures. Electronic signatures are used a lot here in LA and are very convenient and speed the process along. But please don't start signing because the software says sign here. You are able to review the document via the scrolling feature before you ever hit sign. My team always sends an explanatory email ahead of the document outlining the salient points in the document, and we stay available for your questions. Anytime you want a PDF of the document to review it first, we're also happy to make that available. Don't freak out if you accidentally hit sign and done. The document comes back to us, not the other side. I can't speak for other agents, but we would never let that happen. Other agents might set up the process so that it goes to the other side to save time, but I know that mistakes happen, and I want that document coming back to me so that you can let me know if you have any issues with what you just signed. We can start over, or if after talking to me you're satisfied with what you signed, we can move on. We will never tell you that a mistaken signature is just too bad for you. But please also know that if we don't hear from you that there is a problem with the document, we will assume that a signed document is ready to go to the other side. A huge part of escrow is taking advantage of your inspection contingency to get to know the property better before you're committed to owning it. Hopefully, we were successful in getting you a nice fat contingency period when we negotiated the offer. Not that long ago, 21 days was normal. Then it was 14 days. At the height of the crazy seller's market when rates were 3%, buyers were actually waiving property inspections so that they might be a more attractive offer. Fortunately, things have calmed down a little bit in the real estate world, but please know that sellers still have a little bit of a superior bargaining position, and they're still looking for shorter inspection periods, not longer. For the property inspection, I always advise my clients to start with a simple general inspection with an outstanding inspector to flag all the potential problems with the property. That person will raise red flags as needed, and then we'll talk about bringing in specialty inspectors, time and budget permitting. But you have to know that most houses are not new construction. There is new construction available, but anything that isn't new construction is going to have little foibles, and the seller is not going to want to negotiate the price down on every little foible in their lived-in house. If time is short and there are obvious issues to inspect, like a roof or a pool, we might want to hire the general inspector plus the specialty inspectors right away. As I mentioned earlier, inspectors are out-of-pocket expenses for you during escrow, and you don't recoup that money if you walk away from the deal. This is why I like the conservative approach of starting with one general inspection rather than hiring 5 specialty inspectors right out the bat. Please also note that there are inspectors out there, and these guys drive me bonkers. They feel compelled to justify their cost to write a report citing all kinds of problems that aren't really an impediment to owning the property at the price offered. You have to be prepared to take these reports on anything other than new construction with a grain of salt. But please note that if we do turn up legitimate problems, and by the way, early in escrow, the seller is required to provide the buyer with disclosures about the property, about known problems. So possibly the seller won't know about things turned up by the inspector, or sometimes the seller might be trying to hide something. That's all something that we have to determine as we go through escrow. But if problems are turned up, you can ask the seller for a credit to repair the issue or a reduction in price. But and you could ask the seller to fix the issue, but generally you're not going to want to do that because you'll want to hire your own people who will correct the issue to your specifications. But you can ask the seller for a credit or a reduction in price or to fix, but the seller can also decline your request, at which point it's going to be your decision whether to continue with escrow or to pull out. I will be there to advise you, and I know at different times in escrow when you're going to have more ability to threaten to walk away than other points in escrow. This is why an experienced agent is so critical during escrow. An inspection item that almost never used to get any discussion at all in escrow was homeowners insurance. But this is a really big deal lately. You might get a real case of sticker shock when you call and start talking about policies. You might find out the property's in a flood zone or a fire zone and you didn't realize it. But really, all beach cities properties have some risk of natural disaster, and you'll have to obtain insurance if you're using a loan. So be mentally prepared for that number, but don't avoid doing your due diligence until after your inspection contingency has expired. If you're making an offer for a property with an HOA, you will want to inspect pertinent records to confirm you're not buying into a bad situation, such as looming special assessments, litigation, or just general obscenely expensive assessments. Lots of people are selling to get away from these bad situations, and you want to know right away whether this is really the seller's motivation. What they're going to do for disclosure is to hand you a stack of papers. They're not necessarily going to say to your face, hey, by the way, I'm selling because there's a big litigation looming. So take those papers and make sure you're sifting through them. I will be skimming them, but you might not like something that I think is okay. So make sure that you are reading the documents and discussing their contents with me or your agent. Ask for more information if you need it. No listing agent is going to want you to blow up the deal because he or she didn't get you the information you reasonably asked for within the inspection period. Please know that you will be required to formally lift contingencies throughout escrow. If you're not lifting them in a timely manner, a skittish seller can give you notice they're canceling the contract. You'll see this all spelled out in the offer paperwork. Once all contingencies are clear, the paperwork is complete, and final funds are wired to escrow, either by you or your lender. Then escrow closes and the grant deed is sent to the county recorder to be recorded. Closing costs are not insignificant in California, and they can run 3 to 5% of the purchase price, with a biggie being prepaid property taxes. The amount you pay in escrow is variable depending on the time of year we're in when you are in escrow, due to the very weird tax cycle. It is common in California for buyers to get a supplemental bill after you close escrow, because in escrow, what you're doing is you're reimbursing the seller for their prepaid amounts. But remember, they paid at a lower tax rate than you're going to be paying. Hence the supplemental bill after escrow once the property and the taxes have been reassessed. Property taxes in California are split into 2 installments due in December and April. And I think it's even possible to close at a point in time where there aren't any prepayments, or a seller maybe didn't pay their taxes, so there's nothing to reimburse in escrow. But typically, you will need to plan on seeing a supplemental bill after you are the owner of the property. And please note that the analysis I just described assumes the seller bought at a much different tax rate. Sellers who purchased more recently may or may not have purchased at a different tax rate than you. Closing costs for buyers are discussed in more detail in my article titled Planning Your Buyer Closing Costs. Step number 7 on my 9-item list to buying properties is getting the keys. Your offer was successful. You navigated escrow and closed your deal. You've got your keys. Congratulations. Now what? You'll want to set up your utilities right away and change your address with the post office if this is your new primary home. You'll probably want to set up the utilities even before escrow closes, because I can pretty much guarantee you that the seller has already arranged to close the accounts. You will not want to be moving in on your first night with no lights. You should also consider changing your locks. You might like the seller, but you never know who owned the property before this seller, or whether the seller you like has a crazy stalker or worse. So definitely change the locks. I can't tell you how many of my clients don't do it because it's just so easy to trust, but you don't know, and it's not that expensive to change the locks. And now would be a great time to write a rave review for your agent before you get busy with moving. And hopefully that's me and my team. And you'll want to start thinking about what friends need to know me or that other agent. And you'll want to start making some introductions. Step number 8, time to celebrate. The boxes are unpacked and the furniture is arranged. It's time to have your friends and family over to toast your new home. Just let me know where to send the champagne. I and my team would love to join the festivities, but you definitely don't need to invite us. But we do want to send champagne or another treat of your choice, so let us know what your plans are for that party. Step number 9, getting started. If you want to work with me and my team, we are happy to talk to you about how to make that happen. It'll start with our buyer representation agreement, but we use a very simple, straightforward agreement with an easy out clause. In fact, this form was developed by my brokerage and has been an industry leader as the new rules have rolled out in real estate. If you're ready to get started, a link to the agreement will be in the follow-up email that I've mentioned throughout this webinar. Not sure if you're ready to commit to our agreement? We're happy to share listings information and other educational content while you get to know us better. If you think you're ready to sign our agreement but still have some questions, grab some time on my calendar and let's meet to chat. We can meet on Zoom, we can meet in person at my office, at your office, at a coffee house. Grab a link to my calendar by texting the word coffee. Texting that word to that number will get you an automatic link to my calendar where you can pick the time and date of your choosing. Are you already working with another agent? Are they your best choice to getting the lowest price and the terms you want? Based on the information I've shared with you in this webinar, have they explained all the moving pieces to you? Do they even understand all the moving pieces? That's a biggie. Use our agent interview sheet to decide if you have made the right choice. We are not soliciting you to leave that agent to come to us, but we want you to know your rights. You have the ability to fire your agent if you hastily signed another buyer rep agreement and you're not happy with your choice. As we close, I'll leave you with a couple more articles to read, all of which will also be linked in the follow-up email. These include Want to buy a home? Do this first. Home buying long distance. Key terms to know in the home buying process. 3 questions to ask when buying a home. 10 tips for single women buying a home, and should you buy or sell first? Thank you for your time, and I hope we get to work together to get you the best price and the best terms for your next home. Please tell your friends and neighbors about us. We love working with sellers and buyers in all of the beach cities. And please look for the follow-up email mentioned throughout this webinar with the multitude of resources that have also been mentioned. We will use the email address that you used to sign up for the webinar. If you want to have the email sent to another email address, please email team@homesforsalebeachcities.com and let us know where to send the resources. We're rooting for you.